So I got a few requests from my last story saying how I'm going to build this mold to do stories on it. So I will do that, and then I'm going to put them in my highlights, and they'll be there for reference. So first thing we did was, so I've got myself a big old sheet of melamine 4x8 in this case, and I don't know if it's normal or not. I just never noticed before. But this one was actually 49 inches wide. So anyway, what I did was cut down with the track saw 2 strips. They are each 3.5 inches wide, and they will become the side walls on each side. And then I have some extra back in here, and I'm going to use those to be the end walls. So that leaves us 41.5 inches wide for the bottom sheet. And because I'm going to use this mold, I'm going to reuse it. So I wanted to make it as big as possible. This is good for dining room table size. When we put the walls on, the dining room table finished should end up just under 40 inches, probably around 39 or so. So that's why I did that. Now that we have our end pieces cut and our sides cut, time to pocket hole. This is how I do it. I pocket hole down so I can screw the sides, all the walls, into the base. So get your pocket hole on. All right, so now that we have our parts all cut, pocket holed, and ready to go, this is where I would normally say, time to start tuck taping everything or sheathing tape. You'd want to put this tape everywhere. This is what's going to let the epoxy release from the melamine, because the epoxy will stick to this and you will never get it off. Trust me, I've done it. So option A, tuck tape everything so that they end up looking like this. So these are all different size mold pieces we have. So you want everything covered. But in this case, for the first time, I'm not going to use the tuck tape. I'm going to use this product from Polymers Technologies called Techno Release. So for this one, I'm literally going to just brush this on. It's a silicone-based release agent, and I don't need tuck tape. So 2 options: you can use tape, you can use mold release, or if you're rich, you can use HDPE 1/2-inch sheets, and you won't have to use any of that stuff. But in our case, for demonstration purposes today, we're going to be using the Techno Release. All right, now that I have the one side pocket hold on, this is when I like to get my slabs in place of where I want to see them finished. So in this case, we're going 33 and a quarter inches wide. So from that side, now I know that I can put this wall right along this edge. This is another reason why I like doing the pocket holes into the edges, is because now I can use this and move it wherever it needs to be. And in the future, for the screw holes that are going to end up in this sheet, I can just put a little piece of tuck tape over top or silicone to block the hole for the next pour. So let's get this wall in place. All right, so the next step, now that all the walls are in, slabs are placed, I countersink a couple holes on the end parts and the end walls. So we'll screw them into each other. And then next up, basically, you're gonna take the slabs out and we're gonna silicone around all the edges to make it nice and watertight. All right, so our mold or form is completely built and ready to go. Normally, you would see this completely covered in tuck tape, which helps release the epoxy. But we're gonna try out this Techno Release. It is a liquid silicone that is a release agent, so we're not gonna need any of the tuck tape. We're gonna brush this on in 2 coats. So we're gonna brush on the first coat around everything, and then we're gonna wait 15 minutes, and then we will put on a second coat. All right, so we've got our 2 coats of of the Techno release in there. So we just use foam brushes. You do one coat, wait 15 minutes, let it dry. Second coat. The only thing you want to do on the second coat is you don't want to leave any standing liquid. So you get in there with a nice clean cloth. Make sure you get it all wiped down. We're going to let that dry. And then I'll get the slabs in there again. But in the meantime, today, for the first time, this is all new for all of us, I'm going to do the silicone on the outside seams of the mold instead of the inside. So the silicone, the caulking, won't stick to the silicone mold release, so we're going to do it on the outside edges anyway. All right, so we have our just regular old silicone all around all the edges where all the seams meet on the outside of the form. So we're going to let that dry. I'll get the slabs placed back in place, and we're going to give a squirt on the bottom of the slabs of the same silicone, not to stick it to the mold because we know the silicone won't stick, just to create a barrier so that when we clamp down the slabs, this will spread out and make a waterproof barrier underneath so we don't lose too much epoxy under the slabs. All right, so here's what I'm talking about for the slab. You just put a little bead of silicone down along the live edge. So when I flip this over into the mold, that'll spread out underneath and create a little bit of a barrier so that no epoxy leaks under and messes up the bottom. That's the plan anyway. So one of the biggest questions I get asked when it comes to river pours and epoxy and resin work is, how do you figure out how much you need? This is the magic formula. You take the average width, so you measure all along the river, take 4 or 5 measurements. I did 6 in this instance. And you're gonna write down your numbers. So I'll flip it around here. So I had 3 inches, 4 inches, 4 inches, 3.75 inches, 1, and 1.5. So you add those all up, and then you divide it by the amount of measurements you took. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever that number was, divided by 6 gave me 2.87. So that's my average width of the river. Then you take your length, 63 inches, times the depth, 1.75 inches, times that average width, 2.87. I know that this pour is going to be 316 and a half cubic inches. So then there's a math formula that you do to calculate to convert the cubic inches to liters, or you do what I do, you go on Google and you just type it in and it tells you how many liters. That's all there is to it. So after a quick Google calculation, I know that this pour, my 316 and a half cubic inches, equals out to 5.1 liters. So that's how much epoxy I need. All right, so everything is done. Can't flip my camera around. Got the table clamped down. We've got the silicone barrier for any overfill running along the live edge. Got everything siliconed around all the mold and the form. All we got to do now is wait for that silicone to dry and mix up some epoxy. So as you can see, I've got bars clamped using some blocks. This is putting pressure down on the live edge, which is compressing the silicone that's underneath. So this will keep it from floating up and hopefully keep as much epoxy as possible from leaking underneath the slabs. Then on top of the slabs, we run a bead of silicone here to try and stop any overflow that might happen, just to keep it clean. But like I said, now we wait, and that is gonna be ready to pour. So I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a shout. I definitely will let everybody know how that mold release agent works. I don't see it not working. Everything from polymers works great, so it won't be any different. But that's it. Talk to you later.